My name is Sydney Bowen, I'm 17 years old, and I have Turner syndrome. Turner syndrome is a genetic disorder caused when chromosomes are deleted. So the mutation itself is called deletion. Deletion can affect a lot of different things. With Turner syndrome specifically, you are lacking a lot of growth hormones. So short stature is a big deal with Turner syndrome. It's in about like 70 to 80% of all Turner girls have short stature, so it's a big deal. Lots of hormones get deleted, so puberty is definitely compromised in that situation. And your immune system is lacking enzymes and things, so it's very compromised. You're susceptible to obesity and diabetes and cancers and heart conditions and kidney failure. So there's a lot of different things that it can affect, and there's also things with the brain. So there's a lot of learning disabilities, depth perception, so driving is very difficult, and like puzzles and things like that are very difficult for the brain, and it just can take control of every part of your body, both physical, mental, emotional. Basically any part of the body can be affected by Turner syndrome. I was diagnosed in 2015, so I was a few months shy of being 12 years old, and growing up, they never really suspected anything. I was always shorter than my classmates, but kids are small, and so it didn't really become a problem until like 5th or 6th grade. They were a little bit concerned about my height. They're like, all right, well maybe she'll hit that, middle school growth spurt and she'll be back to normal. But that never happened. I'm still the same height pretty much as I've been since around that time, 6th, 7th grade. And they went in and they kept looking at my growth chart, and they were a little bit concerned. But what really pushed us to find the diagnosis was I grew a lump on my chest. It ended up being an extra bone, and they were a little bit concerned about that because it just kind of came out of nowhere. And they looked at that, made sure it wasn't cancerous because it was a lump at the time. They weren't sure what it was. They also looked at my bone structure, and bone structure is a huge thing with Turner syndrome, so that also played into it. And looking at the extra rib, I was diagnosed with a mild case of scoliosis as well, which is a huge deal in Turner syndrome as well. They took my blood, and a couple days later, they called my parents and I was diagnosed. Ever since the diagnosis, it was a weird thing to comprehend because also I was 12 years old and I didn't understand genetics completely at the time. Obviously, we hadn't been in biology class yet, and I knew what chromosomes were because they kind of talked about it in 7th grade, but not a whole lot. I understood the basic ideas of it, so I did a lot of research on my own. I've done a ton of research since then, and really what we've discovered is a lot of different things. So my nails are really curved. It's like a C curve looking at my nails, and that's a huge thing with Turner syndrome. They have webbed necks, so the skin from the back of like the nape of your neck kind of just expands and like goes to like the middle of your shoulders. I don't really have that, but I have a little bit down here at the bottom. And of course, like I mentioned, the scoliosis. I have really wide offset rib cage, like my ribs are like out and like a little bit disheveled. And I've always had problems like doing puzzles I never really liked. They were always too hard for me for some reason, but that's also the depth perception and things like that was always pretty off. And coming to being 15 and a half, 16 years old, driving has been a pretty big challenge for me. That's why I haven't had my license yet, but I've discovered that my depth perception just continued to get worse growing up with the puzzle situation. And I've definitely seen myself pulling ahead of cars that I should not have been pulling ahead of, just because I cannot tell whatsoever like where I am based on other people and different cars. So that's definitely been the biggest challenge right now as far as day-to-day life with Turner syndrome. But I guess that's all like the physical things, but like the mental and emotional things is, I have my moments, I have my days where it's just like I feel so like abnormal compared to people, even though I don't act like it, I don't look like it, I don't sound like it, being short, a lot of people are short. It's not like it's, a big deal, and it's really not day to day. Like it doesn't affect, oh, I can't reach like that. It's really not a big deal for me, but I guess it's more of like the mental thing. Like I straight up will never be normal, and that was really a problem for me over the past few years. Like even just a few months ago, I was just like bawling my eyes out in front of my whole entire family, which I've never done before. Just feeling so like out of it and so abnormal, and like how much I hated having Turner syndrome and da-da-da-da. So I think even just doing stuff like this helps me to get that out and really describe to people, like, just because you can't tell that anything's wrong with me, it doesn't mean that I don't deal with it, like, mentally, emotionally, even, physically, as far as I get sick all the time and all this stuff. So just because, like, people can't see it, people can't tell, doesn't mean it doesn't, like, affect me, because Turner syndrome is, like, a disability. Like, it's in that range of, like, with Down syndrome, you have extra chromosomes, and with Turner syndrome, you get less. So it's in that similar area of you have a disorder, like you have special needs. And with Turner syndrome, you can be very high functioning, and that can be difficult because people don't understand. Just because they don't see you acting like other, disabled people do, it doesn't register in their brains, and so it's harder for them to empathize. And that's why I think me doing stuff like this is super important, because it also helps other Turner girls, because I found that I've made YouTube videos, my website, I've made all kinds of things that have reached people, which I think is super important because it's not talked about. People don't understand the whole chromosome situation, and it's not just height, which is the only physical thing that can really be seen. Like sometimes with the web necks, like, okay, their neck looks weird, all right, whatever. Other facial abnormalities too, but it's not really seen as an issue. It doesn't disrupt their day-to-day life. It's not like, they can't do anything because their neck looks funny. I've been going to therapy for about a year now. I definitely should have started when I was 12 years old, but I never really showed any sort of like emotional issues with it, because then again at the time I didn't understand. I knew, some chromosomes were missing, but I also didn't know the full extent to what that meant. And so I guess the whole idea of like not being normal didn't really register in my brain quite yet, up until like the last couple years. So I think that was a huge step, was going to therapy, trying to talk about it more. And it was just a big deal to start talking about it and try to take it day by day, because I'll get diagnosed with this thing, and like it can all be linked to Turner syndrome. Like it seemed like every little thing about me was about Turner syndrome, and I didn't like that. I didn't want that. And I didn't want, to be the Turner girl. I didn't want to be, a disabled person. Mm-hmm. And because that wasn't how I led my life for the first 12 years. And it was just a big difference between knowing something and like not knowing something, which is so weird, because I've obviously had it since I was first conceived, since I was first born. And so it really didn't actually like change physically anything. It's just the fact of knowing that you're not normal was a big deal. So going to therapy, doing projects and things like that definitely have helped me to take it in stride. Turner girls definitely need to have a bigger sense of community with it, because only 99% of girls who have it die before they're born. So the small percent of girls who are living is like astronomical, and you can feel very alone. So doing research, going to therapy, trying to find people online and stuff like that can really help you get through it. That's how I've done it. I made my first YouTube video about it when I was 13, so just, a little bit after I was diagnosed. And it reached quite a bit of people. The comments were flooded with other Turner syndrome girls, and that was a huge deal. It was just like, it helped me to understand that I wasn't the only person in the world that had it, even though I could see the numbers. I knew how many people in the United States had it. I knew how many people across the world had it, but it didn't really feel like it yet. I just, oh, they're so far away, like it's not gonna help me in any way. But thankfully through the internet and things like that, it just heightened the feeling that you're not gonna be alone in all of this, which is a huge deal, of course. As far as affecting my future, Turner syndrome is definitely a huge deal with infertility. A lot of Turner syndrome women can never have kids, or it's just extremely difficult, like they had to, get a surrogate, egg donor, all these different things, which is great because, medical research has just gone through the roof in the past 15, 20 years with all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely issues with that if women decide to have children. Definitely with the driving situation, it can be dangerous for me to continue to try to drive, but I still will. I don't think I'll never drive again, but it's definitely something I'll have to work through and figure out on my own. I think letting that hold me back is just gonna continue to make me feel like I'm not normal, which is definitely not something I want to feel anymore and not something I want to experience. So I think doing the most that I can with what's going on with me is gonna be a huge deal. So to anyone who has just watched my lovely spiel about Turner syndrome, I want you to know that just because somebody has an invisible illness doesn't mean that they don't experience things on a day-to-day basis, whether that's physically, emotionally, mentally. So I encourage people to talk about it with anyone that they meet who has it, or do research. Anything that you can do to help us would be amazing. Us Turner girls definitely can use any sort of sense of community possible. And to my fellow Turner girls, I love you guys so much. Keep going. Don't let it hold you back. Don't let it control you. I find that when I let myself get to that position, it just makes everything that we deal with so much harder, and that's definitely not what we need. So definitely continue to watch videos like this, continue to find people online, find conventions and things when everything opens back up. So make sure that you take care of yourself, and I love you guys. So for more information from me, you can continue watching more videos from me on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Sydney Bowen, and my new project called the Turner Syndrome Awareness Project, which has an Instagram and my website, which can all be linked in my YouTube. So feel free to go look that up.